Hello, welcome back to the third video of this week, or this chapter out of 3 for the Python Programming in ArcGIS course, job 453-651. The subject here, looking again in a little bit more depth at how the computer reads a line of code. We've seen throughout terms expression and statement. And this looks at the distinction between those two sorts of concepts. Expressions and statements can, in many ways, superficially look the same, but are treated quite differently by the computer. First, about the distinction. They are similar. An expression we can think of as kind of like our phrase in regular writing. The expression in computer science is something that it will evaluate to something. It'll have an outcome. So examples, if we have x as a number, we can have x plus 5, and it will be whatever that number is plus 5. If it is, we can also have x whether or not it is equal to 5. It will be true or false as the outcome, and that will indeed be that evaluation. Hopefully by the time you see this, you have gone far enough in the chapter to see strings and sequences, kind of the middle sections of the chapter. We can have additional expressions using the methods and functions that go along with those two types of variables. So we can have an expression if I have a string ArcGIS, I can have using the keyword in, I can have an expression GIS in str that will evaluate to true. Again, it evaluates to something. If I have a list, I can use the reverse method for that list object and get as the evaluation of that expression the reverse of that list. So just flip everything around, flip all the indices. These are all expressions. They evaluate to something. One thing that is common among them is when you type them into Python, in the Python window, you will get as an output whatever that expression evaluates to. That is not a perfect means, but in general, that can, whether or not it gives you something in the Python window, is a good first pass at trying to identify whether you have an expression or a statement. Statements, except for the print function, will typically not print anything as output into the Python window. So now moving on to statements. A statement is similar to a sentence in our regular writing. So building upon that language analogy, a statement is basically our sentence. The best definition I've seen, which again is kind of vague, is a complete unit of execution. where an expression evaluates to something but doesn't actually do anything with that result. A statement actually does something. It is therefore a complete, self-contained, nice, complete unit of execution. At this stage, the most common approach we'll see for having a statement is the one, well, I'll give two. The first one is one that I already mentioned, a print function. So if I go print str, that is basically the one print function that will actually put something as output in the Python window, because what you're telling the computer to do is to print that off, print that out. The other one is to set a variable. So I can have reverse list equals lst.reverse. Tying this back, these two distinctions, and this is where it's important to recognize that distinction, tying it back to the parsing idea, we can now go back and revisit the structure or the syntax of the assignment operator. So the first pass for the tokens is going to be like this. This here can be broken down into more tokens, and we'll get to that. And the full explanation will actually be in a few weeks. The rev list here, this has to be a variable name for an assignment operation. Our second token in the assignment operation must be the equals operator. What comes to the right is whatever, it can be very broad, it just must be an expression. It has to evaluate to something. That something is what goes into the box for that variable name. In this case, it is further broken down into the syntax for running the method of a function with the dot, the object name beforehand, the method name afterwards. Sorry, I think I said method of a function, method of object. And the parentheses afterwards at the very end to indicate this is a method, not a property. Again, we will see this and everything going along with this in far more detail in a few weeks. The main thing here, the main lesson, is the distinction between the statement and an expression, where a statement being a unit of execution. The example here of the equals or assignment operator, where its syntax is such that it must have an expression on the right side of the equal sign. So just to recap, expressions are kind of like our phrases in writing. They always, in computer science, always evaluate to something. And our statements are kind of like our sentences. These are, in a way, to build upon that analogy and look forward towards the next chapter. Simple statements, complex statements are what we will see coming up in the next chapter and the next set of videos. So, again, hope everybody has a good weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you next week for the next set of videos.